live. And there we are. Okay, hello. My name is Colin, and welcome to episode 28 of Roll by Roll's Tavern Talk, a show where we, the Roll by Roll gang, discuss various aspects of running a great D&D campaign based on our experiences with D&D 5e and our current adventures in Emathan homebrew campaign. So joining me tonight is the rest of the Roll by Roll crew. We have Max, who plays Kogon. Welcome,
That's
Max.
me. Hello.
And we have Egan, who plays Douglin.
Howdy.
All right, well, welcome, guys. So, in looking for a topic for tonight, the realization came upon, thankfully, Egan and myself as soon as you mentioned it, that we haven't talked about magic items yet, because everyone loves magic items. So we thought we would spend a little chat, a little tavern talk, talking about magic items. So I got a couple questions to start the night off for you guys. I didn't tell you this one. This is a little quiz for the two of you. Think you're going to know the answer to this, but here we go.
27.
42.
42, the meaning of life and everything. What do you think the most purchased and the most used magic item is in most campaigns?
+1 sword.
Is a healing potion considered the magic item?
Potion
healing.
of healing.
Oh,
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I think most every party, every campaign, you have purchased many potions of healing and used many potions of healing. All right. So second question for the night, or I guess a little discussion. Max, we'll start you off down this road.
Okay.
What is your favorite magic item?
Okay. Well, if I'm a DM and I'm looking for something fun to dole out, I like the chaos. So I think a deck of many things
Oh,
is friggin' phenomenal. And in the same vein, less talked about, probably nigh unheard of, the bag of beans.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, bag of beans is really cool. I mean, if you dump the beans, it causes an explosion. But yeah, you could take out an individual bean, the players can, and plant it, and then you can. My heart is in rolling on the random generator to see what it sprouts and stuff like that. There's lots of cool stuff in there, and you can make that the basis of a campaign if you really wanted to. Like some fun stuff in there. So
And you know, you touched on a great point. There's lots of magic items that can really drive a campaign. You know, like
yeah,
a deck of many things, bag of beans, things like that, where it's very random what's going to occur, and then you just roll with it. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, good choices.
And then from a player perspective, I don't I don't think about this a lot anymore because I've really just started to embrace like making characters and just see what comes up. I think if you have your heart set on a magic item, that can be a dark path in a way. You know what I mean? But I'll revert to Fizz bands that came out a couple years ago. They introduced this idea of these horde items. Okay, and these horde items, the idea is that they absorb the power of a magical dragon's horde, and as a result, they have different stages of growth. So, like a weak dragon might have an uncommon affix, and then they get stronger and stronger up to legendary. So there's 4 tiers, and the next tier contains the other tier before it as well. So they just keep scaffolding on top of each other. And it's really cool. There's a weapon version, there's a focus version, there's a potion version. And the idea is that they can grow in strength as you do whatever in the game. You know what I mean? And I kind of like that idea as a player of having something, if you have an archetype that you really enjoy and you get this weapon and, it can grow with you at the same time at determined levels or, however you unroll it in your campaign or whatever. But it's very cool. So I think that's kind of falling into my idea of stuff that I like is items that seem to match your growth. But
Yeah, that's there's quite a few different items. And you know what I mean? There's actually lots of people have homebrew things
Yeah, for sure.
where the items evolve over time and you learn more of their abilities and things like that. That's pretty cool too. Egan, yourself?
Yeah, Max, I like how you answered too with kind of a perspective of DM versus player character. From the DM side, I like magic items that are sort of quest based. I've been a fan of also like things that give outside of ASIs and level ups, like benefits to characters, because you're always jonesing for better ability scores. I mean, it affects
Yeah.
everything. So all those manuals that they have, bodily health, gainful exercise, stuff like that. It's always nice, maybe not the overall quest, but definitely a character specific side quest is always a fun thing to kind of lay out in front of everybody. I do love the leveling up too. I'm playing in another campaign where I've been gifted an heirloom from the character's father, and as he levels up, it's going to gain in potency. It's the dragon vessel actually. So right now it's called the slumbering dragon vessel. It's just potion of healing and climbing. But the next level now, all
Yeah,
of a
that's what I'm
sudden,
talking
it
about.
has, yeah, it has like, I think it has invulnerability eventually. So that's a really cool thing too, from a DM perspective. But from a player's perspective, it's actually a simple one, but I loved it. It was so effective, and for my character, just had so much utility. Was the winged boots that Ben
Mm.
used. Well, first of all, it lasts forever. I mean, you're never going to use it up, I don't think, unless you're trying to travel great distances. But you can fly up to 4 hours, and then basically within 12 hours, you get 2 hours back. So it never became an issue that it would run out of juice. But stealth rolls, thing of the past. I mean, you're literally, quietly hovering in the air. Also, he became a little bit of a distance caster. So, whoop, let me
Oh
just
yeah,
back
that's
up
deadly.
and yeah.
That's deadly.
So it was just a fun magic item that I'm sure drove you crazy, Colin, but I loved
You know
it.
what? I didn't mind it. I remember one of our players at the time. He was like, "Oh, you're gonna hate the fact that he has wing boots," and I'm like, "Not really. Like, I think as a DM, any magic item you can work with. You know, it
Yeah,
changes the dynamics of some of the situations, but you just evolve with the magic items that are involved there, right? So,
yeah. Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun though, and you put some fun things in front of them to try to, it was great. It was a lot of fun having that.
for myself, so as a player, Um, this single magic item has always been my most favorite magic item. It's it's just the good old bag of holding. When
Oh yeah, I
when
mean,
um, when I first started to play D&D, AD&D, um, I had a character who had bags of holding inside bags of holding inside, because back then there wasn't any rules that used to stop you from,
Yeah, I was gonna
obviously I
say
was
that's pretty
more
nuclear
than,
big.
bomb.
it was people like me that they had to evolve the
Uh,
bag of holding, so you couldn't have a bag of holding with 100 bags of holding in it. And
My God.
but this character used to basically collect everything, everything in every room. I would jam it all into all of these bags of holding, and it's just always been one of my most favorite magic items.
Oh,
Um,
it's
as far
awesome.
as a DM goes, uh, I love sentient items
oh yeah, yeah,
Oh
that's
because
cool.
they
wow,
make they
nice.
make for really good story, and we had them in Storm King's Thunder. We had a couple of different. We had a somewhat sentient item going for a while in our current campaign around Valamore's whip, and
Oh.
yeah, because they give you something to to really focus on that character with, so that you can really focus on different characters and different story pieces that you can write around those. So that's a favorite for me. All right, so our next question here. one of the big pieces that when people are putting campaigns together, you have to sort of think about is how common is magic in your world. So you have, although I've never actually played in either one of these campaign settings. You have Dark Sun, which I understand is very low magic. And you have Eberron, which is very high magic. Like you've got two extremes there. So
Semi sci-fi even.
yeah. So what are
Yeah.
your Max? What are your thoughts? And where's your mind when you're deciding how common magic should be?
Um, I really like the idea of earned magic items, you know what I mean? So, um, if a store, not every store should have magic items, you know what I mean? Think even mundane seeming things like a +1 magic sword, for example, should be really hard to come by, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Um, that's just the style that I like. You know what I mean? And I think if you want to play, well, we can get into that afterwards. There's a whole like philosophy, obviously, that's embedded with all this. I'm sure we'll touch on it in a little bit here, but yeah, my mindset is to have a more low magic on the surface, right? Your everyday encounters in towns and villages is low magic, but then it's definitely they're out there, but they're rewards. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, epic quest arcs and like, or even sometimes just like off the beaten path, and it just turns into something random and cool. You know what I mean? I
Yep.
do like the random treasure tables. Those are really fun to use. You know what I mean? Like, who knows? That could be awesome. You know what I mean? Like sometimes embrace the random sometimes. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Egan?
I'm with Max as far as the earned, the magic item needs to be earned. I think, not every encounter is a loot drop like
Yeah.
that. But I think if there are more meaningful combats, then yeah, a magic item is not out of the realm of making sense. I do love too the randomness, as we mentioned before the show. AD&D had a miscellaneous magic, and man, you would just roll on that. Just oh my God, I wish I rolled that. And I just think it could be, like if the setting isn't being saturated with magic item, right? If this becomes something to where each of your PCs have all three attunements filled up and they've got 10 things in their bag that they're not even bothering to use, then there definitely should be a paring down of this.
Yeah.
But if your attunements aren't full, and you're starting to get into the 10, 11, 12th level, you might want to think about throwing a magic item, and hey, they could roll a +5 Holy Avenger, or they could roll a what do you call it? A time clock that tells you the time.
Yeah.
Like you don't know.
Yeah.
So I think there's both ways to look at this. I do know, and I think we might talk about it later, but 5e, you don't need really magic items. You don't need them because there's so much utility that each character has to survive. Maybe short of a potion of healing, which technically is the magic item, but no, I think a good balance and the randomness outside of a specific quest for an item, I think is a lot of fun.
Yeah. So in terms of how common magic is in the world, I think I tend to sort of go mid to moving towards high a little bit. I like magic to be um out there. To me, in my worlds, often I think of it. It's like it's like higher technology. It's out there. I may not have ready access. I know
Mhm.
about it, and it's out there, but not everybody has access to the best technology that's out there.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely agree with both of you in terms of you shouldn't be able just to go down to Magic R Us and pick up whatever you want in terms of magic
Flames
items.
tongue.
I'm not against the purchase of magic items, but I've always made it sort of the thing where, it's a bit of a process to go
Oh,
down
for
that
sure.
road, right? You can turn that into almost a quest. You got to meet this guy who knows a guy, and we might be able to get it, sort of thing. Um, I like players to have magic items because I think it adds a lot of fun to the campaign. Um, the Dungeon Master's Guide has some rules about how much is too much magic item, and I believe that Xanathar's got into that a little bit more. Um, I don't think any two campaigns really dole magic items out the same way. It's a preference for the group. There's no right or wrong way, like most things. Um, I like a world that has magic globes floating in the middle of the room, lighting up the room, and if it's a place that is appropriate because they have either the magical means or the financial means to do that. That means, just like in our world, they have the ability to access that technology. That's sort of how I always think about it in my mind. So we kind of touched on, should you be able to buy magic items? I think we're in agreement. Questing for magic items in one way or another makes for a lot better than.
Yeah. I mean, I can
Well,
touch on that a little bit more. I did
Yeah.
run a campaign where the one place there was one place in the game world that I was playing that I was running where you could buy some pretty impressive magic items, but they were ridiculously expensive. You know what I mean? Because they were the only ones of them.
Right.
This was like some of like a sommelier of arms and armaments, basically. Do you know what I mean? And it was like, sure, you can get this, but this is like 20,000 gold, and this is
Yeah.
like 35,000 gold. You know what I mean? So it was a fun way to give players a taste of the power that was awaiting them after they'd looted enough. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
gone through levels and levels and levels of play. Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like so, I think, but again, it drives like
hmm
adventure. Do you know what I mean?
I
So
I also think too, like where, like you can't go into like a small town and the person that sells you, fine, they have potions of healing because those are pretty common, but you're not going to find high level stuff there. It's just like, so if you go into a big city, the capital of some major area, okay, you can find stuff. But yeah, it's going to be expensive, maybe even more than what the DM guide suggests is the price, because this is a, life changer for people. Access to technology, right? Some
yeah,
people can afford it, some people can't. So, but yeah, it's very video game like too, right? Like, okay, you can buy this sword right now, but oh, here's that incredible sword for 10,000 gold,
yeah.
and
You
you're
want
at
to
level
save it?
3. Like,
Yeah.
oh man, I better start what do you call it, grinding out some levels here. So yeah.
Yeah, to get back to sort of what I was saying before, to what you were mentioning there, Egan, it's like, if you relate it back to technology again. So you go into some small backwater town, they're not likely going to have the newest iPhone there, right? You're just not going to be able to find it there. Somebody in town might have an iPhone, that if you attacked everybody until you found something, but you're not going to go to the local store and pick one
Yeah,
up,
and buy
right?
it. Yep. Gas station sushi, right? It's just not worth it.
So, next question here, and this is having both of you put on your DM hats a little bit here. Um, how should players discover what a magic item does? Now, obviously, there's some direction in the books around that, but what are your thoughts on that,
Well,
Max?
sorry, I just jumped the gun
Nope,
there.
that's good.
I'm assuming I'm going first.
Yes,
Um,
it's your day.
yeah. I will say that, the 5e Dungeon Master's Guide has this thing where like players can mess around with it for an hour and figure it out. I think that's stupid. Personally, you know what I mean? It's a the incentive to take Identify. I'm all aboard Identify. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's cool to me. It gives a niche to that character. They're like, oh, let's give it to, Sir Discover a lot, and like he'll figure it out. Otherwise, discovering it through play,
Yes.
you know what I mean? That's fine. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you're adventuring and like, they make this attack and the DM just describes what it does, but not mechanically. That's pretty cool. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like, and then, you can just finally like break down and give it to them. You know what I mean? But I think that's awesome, and you can hide cursed items in there that way. And like, you could there's a ton of fun you can have. You could really whip up some like homebrewy stuff too. So like under very specific circumstances, you could have a pre-written, this'll happen. And you don't know when the player's gonna stumble on that. You know what I mean? And like just like there is a ton of fun things you can do that way. But yeah, as far as the whole like I know why they put it in there because they're like, oh, if a character doesn't have identify or they don't have access to
They
that, they
need
just
some
want
way to figure out what it
yeah, yeah.
does. Yeah.
But I think that kind of like spoils the spirit of what D&D should be. You know what I mean? That's a little gamey,
Yep.
too gamey, in my opinion. But
Egan?
I I am also in that camp. You got to ask yourself, how would a fighter looking at a sword know what it does? I know we can't use the, oh, it doesn't make sense. That's not, I know it's a fantasy world and stuff like that, but you have to have some sort of logic behind how things are discovered. And I think that that is part of the fun, as Max said, like have them wield it in battle. Is it a cursed one? Is it sentient? Does it tell you, hey, you need to go kill that because I need blood? Okay. Okay, obviously it's magical, but what? What is it going to give you, right? Or does it share all of its secrets? So, the identify spell, as you said, is something that is an important spell. It's there for a reason. It's also one of the lower level spells that actually requires a certain GP amount of something. Like you have to have, what is it, a diamond or something, or pearl, a 50 GP pearl or something like that.
well, that
So,
sounds like it might be
uh,
it.
yeah, and I always look at those types of spells as a little bit more meaningful. Like, okay, you can do it, but you got to get this. So, that's part of the discovery process of these things. Now, lower magic items like a potion of healing, I don't think I would make a character have to roll for it. Everybody knows what those look like. But nuance magic items, for example, I could put on boots, mentioning the winged boots before. Okay, well, what if they're boots of, I think there's a cursed one that makes you dance, right? If you don't have an identify spell and somebody's brave enough to put it on, risk or reward, right? That's the game, man.
Yeah.
So try it. If you don't have a wizard that says, oh, don't put those on, hey, give it a shot, see what happens. You might be rewarded greatly. You also might be dancing for the rest of your life. So who's to say? But yeah, don't just tell them. I don't think that's the spirit, as Max said, the spirit of the game.
Yeah, I sort of change my strategy on this depending on the item itself and sort of how the group has come about it and the reason
Of
they
course.
have it and that sort of stuff, right? Like I definitely I sometimes, I feel that when you take the time to kind of attune to this item, you learn what it does. But I love the idea of you know there's something special about this. You attune to it, but you don't fully get the gist of what it does until you
Yeah.
try using it the first time. Again, that makes for fantastic story, right? If all of a sudden it does something you didn't expect. Um, but I think Max, you said it. Like I don't like the idea that you got to sit down and play with this thing for an hour and suddenly you know what it does. I think some items that should happen in a way, but sometimes you're just not going to know what it does until you get into the moment. I love I love items that have sort of a yin and a yang. In I think it's Storm King's Thunder. There's an axe that gives you a bonus, But anytime you're in the forest, you feel uneasy that somebody's always watching you.
Hmm.
Like it has sort of both sides. So can you live with both of it? Those are kind of fun items as well.
Cool.
And we'll talk about crafting a little bit in a second, but you don't have to play every item by the book either. I mean, you can mash some stuff together, add things. Maybe it needs attunement. You're like, nope, this doesn't. Maybe something doesn't need attunement. You're like, yeah, you know what? In this particular case, it does. So don't be afraid to mess with that a little bit.
Or who can attune to it too?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Be flexible
Yep.
if you want.
yeah. We've got an item right now, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not
I'm
too
using the
worried
rod of
about.
healing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and quite frankly, I introduced the Rod of Healing to the group because they didn't have an ability to heal. Right? So we
We
needed a way to
kept getting our
change
asses kicked.
that. Yeah, to change that so that combat wasn't a one and done thing all the time, right?
Yeah.
Where they could make a bit of a comeback and keep going rather than having to leave and long rest and then come back and try again. And
Hmm.
so it just helped us out there by not worrying about the fact that no one should be able to attune to that. Speaking of attunement, 3 items. Max, what do you think? Too many? Do you ever change it?
I wouldn't change it. I think 3 is plenty. You know what I mean? Attunable items are pretty powerful.
Yep.
And it's a way of if you are, a high magic friendly table of like self-regulating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you can only attune to so many great items. You know what I mean? So it does prevent you from having like wearing 6 pieces of awesomeness. You know what I mean? Just having those
And then quickly
all
switching between them.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think 3 is from what I've experienced a good sweet spot. Because there's attunement levels at all different tiers as well, right? Like when they're labeled uncommon, what is it? Uncommon, rare, legendary, all that sort of stuff. Those are in there for different tiers of play, typically like recommended. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
if you're kind of sticking to those kind of like general guidelines, the tier of the magic to the tier of play that they're at, you can kind of play in those balance areas, then it should be everything should feel pretty good. I don't think you're gonna go wrong there. So yeah,
Yep.
3 is
Egan, what do you think? 3?
Yeah, I think 3 is plenty. I mean, look at battles, right? You're rarely going to be dipping into all 3 of those in any individual battle. So I think 3 is fun. Maybe 2 are battle related ones, sort of outside battle and stuff like that. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there is a class that
artificer.
yeah, that gives you, I mean, that's their class. I mean, if anybody needs another attunement, it's them, all right? They deserve it. They should have it. But yeah, I think if you gave more, it would become, I think, too much, in my humble opinion. Because also not every magic item needs attunement. Let's not forget
Yeah,
about
there's
that.
lots.
You know, so yeah, I think 3 is sweet spot. Absolutely.
I mean, I would agree in my play experience with 5e. 3 seems to have been a pretty decent balance. Um, I have read a little bit, some thought around um, making magic items a little more readily available, but reducing attunements so that you've almost got to think of your magic items like spells.
That's cool.
Which items am I going to prep for so that I have what we might think. So you might be carrying. You
More
might be
player
carrying a
engagement.
half dozen magic items with you, but you can only attune to 1 or 2 of them. So you got to kind of almost think like prepping your spells, sort of thing. But
Yeah.
Can I make another quick point too? Like it in a weird way relates to inspiration, how nobody ever uses inspiration in 5e. It's kind of a thing. Like nobody A gives it out, Colin,
I'm
or
terrible
B
for it.
uses it, Egan and Max. Um,
We've never had it.
Another philosophy would be having more, temporary magic items that are consumable, basically. But making sure that, down the road, you're probably going to get some more, so use them. I know, like, I used the potion invulnerability, and I'm still feeling it because I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had it. But I used it, and it was the right time to use it for sure.
Yeah.
So, that's another way to also, there's the consumable magic item that I think a lot of people are afraid to use. So how do you balance that out? Try to give them an incentive and whatnot. So
Yeah.
I just wanted
Stop
to
giving
mention
them
that.
out when if they're not using them. That's my biggest thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
agree.
So
Yeah, it's kind of disappointing as a DM if you dole out these magic items and everybody's excited, and then 3 sessions down the road you think to yourself, haven't even used those even once,
yeah,
in a
yep,
combat or anything. So,
yep. Hey, I'm still
are,
trying to come up with uses for the immovable rod, and I've done a few.
yeah, you have actually.
I
There's been a couple
literally,
I've
of
I've used my decanter of endless water a few
heck
times.
yeah,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
yes.
For stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean items that are a little bit utility, like both of
Yep.
those. I mean they have a very special time when you'd use them, right? I mean
Yeah.
they're not you're not going to pull those out in every situation. Just last point here. We've already snuck up on our half hour, but
Talk about this for
in
hours.
episode 3 we talked about crafting magic items. We got into that a little bit. Just quick thoughts on crafting magic items, Max?
Yeah. Again, I think it's cool. I think whatever drives your adventures and player engagement is great. You just got to be careful that you're not devolving, unless you want to play this kind of game, I guess, like a Monster Hunter style where it's all like to me, it would start to bog down a game if like after every single thing you killed, your player's like, oh, what can we harvest from this to make something? You know what I mean? Like, okay, no, if you yeah, in my opinion, you should make it more recipe focused, you know what I
Yes.
mean? Like rather than like, oh, we can just make whatever out of whatever. It's like, no, no, these are some key items you need to be able to make this cool magic item. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and in our episode around crafting magic items, Max, we talked about that is the direction you should look at more. Is they decide they want something, you decide what the recipe is for that, and then they can kind of quest specifically for those items instead of
I mean, the other way could be cool if you want to make like a survival style, like we're setting up an
MacGyver.
outpost. And this is our like an outpost for, you know what I mean, settlers, and this is how, there's a lot of fun you
yeah,
could
just
do on
harvesting
anything,
everything you
yeah,
can
just
to make what you
harvesting.
can to sell it.
If
Yeah, I
people
mean
if
it's
people are having fun, they're having fun. So in the
absolutely.
end, it's like
Yep.
whatever.
Egan, thoughts around crafting magic items?
Don't do it. Don't go anywhere near it. Don't introduce it to any game you play in ever. I am a little bit jaded on this one, only because I tried to play one of the most difficult classes to play, at least in my opinion, because it does take so much from everybody. And as you mentioned, Max, he was constantly having to look for things, and to me it became a distraction. And I know Colin said it never did and all that stuff, but for my part, it became not fun to do.
Should
So
be around like a agreed upon mechanic almost of the game. Do you know what I mean? To make it
oh
more
yeah,
viable
no,
for
we
that
tried. We
character.
tried.
Yeah.
We worked on this
Yeah.
all the time, and it just became like I no. I it's because otherwise what happens is that Colin's going to have to sort of artificially put in downtime. And I know
That's
we
what I
had
was just going to
one,
say.
That's tough.
One
yeah,
of the difficulties for that particular, when you're wanting to craft magic items, and there is this big time commitment in doing that.
yeah,
We don't typically play campaigns where there is a lot of downtime.
no,
The
no,
story is always moving in some direction, and yeah, I mean we could choose to put downtime in it, but there's always a lot of pieces in play
hmm
in the campaigns, where they're not so much um we have to
Adventure
do
of the
this
week.
thing,
hmm
we've done it, now we can do a bunch of
yeah,
downtime, now we have
Yeah.
this new thing we need to
Yeah.
do, we've done it,
it,
now we could have a bunch more
yeah.
downtime, right?
If I had to sort of rewrite it, or let's just say moving forward, if attempted this again. Taking a little bit of what we did with Colin and a little bit what Max suggested is don't just make it here. He's an artificer. He can make anything he wants as long as he has these items. Make it sort of like an ASI. Every fourth level, he can create this level of a magic item. You don't have to worry about him collecting things, doesn't have to worry. Just it's sort of like understood that during his adventuring and his leveling up, he's learning what to do to make something. Now,
Mhm.
you can sort of predetermine that as a DM, or you can say pick from this table, because then you're not bogging it down and it's sort of a natural progression. Okay, fourth level, he gets an ASI, he gets a feat, and he gets to create a magic item. Maybe fourth level, it's a common magic item.
Yeah.
Eighth level, uncommon or whatnot. Because I think that would just flow. And also give again, the whole thing of an artificer really is to make stuff. I mean, that's their jam, if you will. So to kind of have that not available, for lack of a better term, because
Well,
again, it just, yeah.
to be fair, you didn't play him into the levels where he gets all the really rad infusions.
Well, I know, but the infusions are part of it too. And yes,
Yeah.
there were some that were, coming. I mean, to be honest, we're not even there. Yeah, I'm looking at him right now. We're not even close to where he starts to get, the really, really crazy stuff. But that's neither here nor there. It if they listen to me and redesign the way they can do things, that's how I would do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because some stuff was going to take what, 30 weeks?
Yeah.
We're not
Yeah.
Yeah.
playing 30 weeks,
No.
Yeah, and it's
Other,
it's really
yeah,
hard in our current campaign to incorporate that because the wheels are turning whether you're 30 weeks crafting something or not, right?
But that
yeah,
that's a hint to the idea of how strong and rare magic items should be, in my
yeah,
opinion. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? When
Yep.
when you look at those kinds of mechanics where they're like, you can do it this is what we recommend. It's like, oh, well, that takes some serious effort.
yeah.
Like th- these shouldn't just be like a dime a dozen out there in the
Exactly.
world. You know what
Because
I
of
mean?
how
So,
hard they are to
yeah,
create. Yeah, absolutely.
exactly. Exactly.
But look at it this way though. Even sort of, I think uncommon was 2 weeks. Colin, aside from our break, right, the one that we put in the game, have we even played 2 weeks?
I think we've been. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
we've been
we
over a month
we're
now.
we've just finished up a Trigon, which is
Okay.
4 or 10 days. So yeah,
Okay. So
but I mean
yeah,
40 days,
Yeah, it's still not a
right.
and
lot.
half the campaign has occurred in the last
Yeah.
40 days, right? So
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, it just as I said,
Yeah, for sure.
play the Iron Man version of Artificer. It's a lot easier.
all right,
Armor.
let's wrap this one up, guys. Max, any final thoughts on magic items?
Oh man, I have so many thoughts. Hard to pick a final one. Well, let's see. I guess it's really just finding that balance between what you want as a DM and what your players want, you know what I mean? As always. I do have one. We didn't really talk about pitfalls, things to be wary of. I'd be really wary of two things. Things that greatly increase your player's defense and things that greatly increase your player's DCs on spells and things like that.
Yep.
Those will ramp. Those will be a huge swing in the balance of player to enemy. So you got to be
Yeah.
prepared to up the difficulty if that's what you're gonna do, because it is huge. Just adding +1 to spell DC is unbelievable. How much like your players will get out of that. It's a lot. So be very careful about that. The one thing where they're like the warlock, I could see you can get that rod that raises their DC because they only get like 2 or 3 spells. You know what I mean, at a time. But yeah, be very careful of that defense and spell save DCs. Very very.
Egan?
I would say that magic items are fun. Reading about
Mm.
them, learning about them, and if you get the fortune to actually, get some that just make it that much more fun, lean into it. You got a magic item, describe it. We're always talking about, don't just cast a spell, tell us what you're doing, and the same can be said for magic items. And I again, going back to it, I hope DMs make characters earn it because it'll be that much more satisfying for them to actually use those. But use them. At the end of the day, use them.
Yeah.
All
From
right,
it,
more
I mean,
thoughts.
I love magic items.
Yeah.
For me, they're a huge part of what I love about dungeons, just magic in general. I mean,
Yeah.
and magic items, it's a big part of, So I'm always throwing little, torches that never burn out and globes that
My drift
you
globe.
know
I love it.
tents tents like from Harry Potter that
Oh
look
yeah.
small on the outside, but it's a I love all those sort of little things like that. Rooms that are way bigger than they should be. We had the at Windrest, we had a couple of different magic rooms that did different things. I just love it. To your point, Max, in terms of combat, you really have to think about the magic items you're doling out, because they if you think trying to balance a an encounter is difficult, as you start to add in all this magic item stuff, it can really change that encounter. So you do definitely have to keep that in mind when you're doling out certain types of magic items, because those pluses don't seem like much, but they can definitely swing things unexpectedly. So, all right, we'll call that a wrap for episode 28 of Roll by Roll's Tavern Talk. So hopefully anyone watching has enjoyed tonight's topic. Tavern Talks occur on Wednesdays after each of our Saturday night adventures in Emathan sessions. So our next session is scheduled for next Saturday.
Next
So what is
Saturday.
that, 20th? July 20th, I believe?
Think
Somewhere
so.
around there?
Yep, sounds about right.
For anyone watching on YouTube, please support us by making sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you hit that little bell icon, you'll be alerted the next time that we upload a session. So, as we do at the end of each of our episodes, we'll offer a cheers. You got a whole bottle of something going there tonight,
Not this
Egan?
time.
No, not this time.
Not
Thanks
this
for
time.
joining us in the tavern, and hopefully you can join us again next time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Until next time.